Hello, hello, hello. Ho, ho, ho. Or is it a real? Alright, hey guys, Michael Kummer here, streaming live from our backyard today. Today I'm gonna provide the question, or give the questions to all the answers that you guys submitted. So it's gonna be our first Ask Me Anything video. And I got a ton of questions. Thank you so much by email, social media, and on YouTube. And I'm gonna try to answer as many as we can without making the video too long. I know. Now is not the time to play. Go, move it. Move it. Alright, after we've survived the dog attack, we're gonna go back to our questions. So the first question is from Daniel. And Daniel asked or said, "Hi Michael, I'd love to know what water filtration method you use." And so we have a combination of two water filtration systems. We have a whole house water filtration system that is not a water softener, it's a real filtration system. And that's in our basement. And it's from Radiant Life. It's a huge thing that filters basically all of the water and removes many of the contaminants, including the chlorine smell, including the manganese bacteria, which causes the black slime. I have a separate video on that, so check that out. And then we also have a reverse osmosis water filtration system that's under our sink in the kitchen. And that is a 14-stage system, also from Radiant Life, that not only filters the water, but then remineralizes it. So it's not, the water that we drink basically is not void of any minerals. It actually has some minerals in there to make it healthier than just standard reverse osmosis filtered water that is void of anything basically. So that's what we use in the house. Next question is from Brittany. Curious to know what your why is and what keeps you motivated in your endeavors. That's a very good question. There are a couple of factors, some selfless, some selfish. He is so playful today. My hand is not a bone. Not really, no. So there are a couple of factors really that keep me motivated and that basically drive me, or help me to do what I'm doing. And one is, I've learned a lot of things over the years, and I feel like knowing those things makes me almost obligated to share them. I don't want to sit on the information. That was really the reason why I started my blog in 2012. I learned a lot of things about photography, technology, and then later on health and fitness, and so I feel like obligated of sharing that information so others can use it and can hopefully don't have to go through the entire learning process that takes years and years. They can maybe just take a shortcut and do what I do in a short amount of time basically. So that's one of the reasons. The other one is I really like what I'm doing. I like learning obviously, and I like sharing stuff. I like sharing information with people. I'm not necessarily one who goes out and tells people what to do, but if I'm asked, I love to share what I know. And so those are the reasons why I do what I do. Next one is from Petar, and Peter asks, why do you think honey is healthy if it's 80% sugar and 20% water? That's a very good question. However, honey is not just water and sugar. It actually has a lot of micronutrients, including minerals and vitamins and enzymes, that the bees put in when they make the honey from the nectar that they collect from the plants. And so it's very nutritious. And yes, it is sugar at the end of the day, but honey also has triggers a different insulin response than regular table sugar. So your insulin doesn't spike as high with honey, for most people at least, than table sugar. So it's a better sweetener than regular sugar, which is void of anything other than the carbs. It has a lot of micronutrients, and so it makes it a healthy food, and one that we include as part of our diet. We consume a lot of raw honey actually. Next question is from Michael. Hi Michael. And he asks, what are your children eating? Well, our children eat pretty much what we eat. So an animal-based diet that's centered around meat from ruminant animals, predominantly cows, some goat, and some other ruminants, but mostly cows. They eat organs, usually in the form of freeze-dried organs, because they don't like the taste of fresh liver. And yeah, they eat sweet fruits, they eat raw honey, they eat occasionally sweet potatoes, they eat maybe some zucchini or cucumbers, but not very many veggies. Obviously no processed foods. We don't eat a whole lot of, or any grains really. So they eat what we do, or what we eat. And then here's a follow-up question. And it's the same on weekdays or on Sunday. So we don't make any difference in terms of what we eat during the week versus what we eat on the weekend. And then he asked about, how about sugar? Is there cereal? And no, there isn't. And no, there is no added sugars other than what's in the fruit or in honey. Then he also asked if we make a plan for the week, so that if we eat, X time amount of fish and meat, etc. No, we don't really, have any structure there. We just go as we feel based on what it's home. It's usually on most days the protein is some sort of red meat predominantly. Sometimes there is pork, sometimes there is chicken. If we can find chicken that's not only pasture raised but also fed a corn and soy free diet, but it's predominantly centered around red meat, avocado maybe, some fruits, some honey, and that's pretty much it. No structure or really rhyme or reason to that. And then here's another follow-up question regarding how we convince our kids to eat all of those things that other kids probably don't eat, or and vice versa. How do we prevent our kids from eating what others do in school, etc.? And it was a process. We explained to them why we eat, or why we eat, how we eat, etc. And we tell them that not everyone knows what we know about nutrition. That's why we try to share that information, but not everyone knows or wants to know, and so other people eat differently, and that's okay. We do it based on what we know is good for us and good for our body, and so they just roll with that. And then the last thing he asked me to comment on a traditional breakfast that they have. They grind different kinds of seeds and grains and make basically a breakfast cereal from it. What's my opinion on that? We don't eat grains and seeds because they have a lot of anti-nutrients. They're high in omega-6. There are a host of issues associated with grains and seeds, and so we pretty much avoid them whenever possible. We eat very few of them, and so I would, if it was my kids, I would not give them cereal or grains and seeds for breakfast for all the reasons I've pointed out in my blog posts. Next one, Patricia, she asks, I want to remove any stored polyunsaturated fatty acids. So, unhealthy, potentially inflammatory PUFAs, they're called polyunsaturated fatty acids that are stored in the body. How can you get rid of them? Besides stop consuming them in the first place, right? And so the thing is really, if you stop feeding your body unhealthy and inflammatory foods, your body over time will get rid of those stored toxins and inflammatory compounds. It just might take a little while. Now, if you have a lot of body fat, then chances are there are more of those PUFAs stored in your fat tissue basically. And so losing weight by either intermittently fasting, going on a ketogenic diet, exercising more are all good ways to reduce your body fat, in addition to stop consuming those PUFAs in the first place. And that's one way for your body to, just excrete them over time. It just may take a little bit. Some of those stored toxins, etc., take months to get out of your system. And I don't know that there is any good way other than speeding up the fat burning process to speed that up, Doug, he wanted to know, to get a recommendation. He is nearly 60 years old. He turned 60 in August, and he's generally in good health, but he has some health conditions that he shared with me, and so he wants to maintain his health or even improve it. What can he do? And I would say, do all the things that a younger person should be doing as well. Expose yourself to sun, eat well, sleep well, manage your stress well, exercise regularly, lift heavy objects, weight training, etc., sprint. So all of the things that we all should be doing also apply to, you if you're already 60 or maybe even older. And there are a couple of things that you might want to do differently if you're older already. So maybe doing CrossFit at 60 every single day, 5, 6, 7 times a week is not super beneficial to your joints and everything. Maybe works more on your mobility, on stretching, on stuff that that is not as hard on your joints basically. So I wouldn't necessarily go for a run every day if you're already 60. I mean, running is not good for you, period, I think. Not very conducive to your joint health. But I wouldn't do anything differently. I'm 40 right now, and I think I'm gonna do when I'm 60 exactly the same things that I'm gonna do right now, meaning, you know, eat well, sleep well, exercise regularly, depending on how, you know, you feel, if you have injuries, etc. Expose yourself to the sun, walk around barefoot, you know, ground yourself, be in nature, avoid artificial lights, avoid EMFs where possible. And that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything special that you need to do in addition to that. Anurag wants to know what I miss most from Austria. So yeah, I was born and raised in Austria, and he gave a couple of examples like bread, wine, or the weather. It's actually none of that. It's what I miss most is probably family, because all of my family is still in Austria. I'm the only one who came to the US. But besides family, what I really enjoyed in Austria was the 4 seasons where we could, you know, open the windows typically throughout the year in the evening, because in the evening it would cool down a little bit. We could open the windows, get some fresh air in, and then close them during the day. Here in Georgia, not so much, because either it's pollen season, or the humidity is awful, or it's too cold. There is not really any. There may be 2 weeks in spring and in fall where you can open the windows during certain times of the day. But that's one of the things I miss. And the other thing, just having a lot of outdoor activities in close proximity. So, you know, I'm from Salzburg, and so we could just drive for 30 minutes and be in the mountains, you know. Here in the Atlanta area, I mean, not so much. You have to drive much longer distances to get to all of the outdoor stuff that I'm used to from Austria. So that's what I miss most. Susan asks, and that's related to my beef liver supplements that I sell. She asks, if one takes less than the suggested dosage of your supplements, will they still be effective in any way? You know, the question goes, the typical dosage of my beef liver is 4 capsules. That is equivalent to 1 ounce of fresh liver. If you only take 2, for whatever reason, maybe, you know, because you want to stretch your budget or whatever, is it ineffective, or are you wasting your money? And no, I don't think you are wasting your money by taking less. I think the more liver you can eat, up to a certain level, of course, the better it is. But if you get some of the liver, if you get some of the nutrients in the liver, it's still better than if you don't get any of that. So no, I don't think it's a waste of money if you only take 2 instead of 4. All right, Mark had a question, 2 questions actually, related to sauna and cold plunging, and what is the optimum time of the day when you should cold plunge or jump into the sauna. And I don't think there is an optimal time of the day. We do it whenever, you know. Sometimes we do it in the evening to relax, especially as far as the sauna is concerned. Sometimes I jump into the cold plunge before I work out in the morning, or during the day, or really any time. But his question was more related towards the spike in blood sugar that he has seen after sauna bathing and cold plunging, because these activities can actually cause a glucose release. So I'm wearing this continuous glucose monitor here, and he is the same one from Levels Health, and he sees a blood sugar response when he jumps into the sauna or the cold plunge. And I don't think there's anything bad with that. An exercise induced or sauna induced or cold plunge induced spike in blood glucose is not a bad thing. There is nothing to worry about. I think it's completely misguided if your goal is to have a completely flat blood sugar response 24/7. You know, the human body is supposed to, or has evolved in dealing with spikes in glucose, be it, again, exercise induced, be it diet induced, whatever. The one thing that you want to avoid is your blood sugar to be constantly high, elevated, or spikes that last like for hours and hours. If your blood sugar goes up, and I can see it every time I exercise, it might even go up to 200 milligrams per deciliter or so when I really work out intensely, and then it goes down within half an hour. There's nothing wrong with it. There is nothing that's not detrimental to your health at all. So I wouldn't worry about that. And going back to the first question, you know, go into the sauna, go into your cold plunge whenever you feel like it, when you have time, when you feel like you need some, you know, time out basically, or when you need time to relax, do it then. I don't think there is a perfect time of the day when you should be doing that. Luca asks about if I could provide details about the raw animal organs that I eat, if I eat them like individually or mixed, the quality of the meat, etc., and how much I eat, and if I use any spices. So I eat different animal organs. I typically get beef liver and beef heart, from white oak pastures. I sometimes get deer organs when a buddy of mine hunts and brings me the organs. I buy goat organs from a local Indian store here. So it's really a mix and match, and I eat whatever I have at home. And as far as seasoning is concerned, I just use salt predominantly. There is nothing else. Unless I make liver pate, I might actually add a lot of butter to make the pate. But that's pretty much it. In terms of quantity, I try to consume liver every single day. It's not raw or fresh every single day. A lot of the time, or during most days, I actually eat it freeze-dried just because of the convenience. I don't need to worry about freezing, I'm thawing it and preparing it, etc. and making sure it remains healthy to eat. I don't want to have it too long in the fridge. So freeze-dried is my preferred way of consuming liver, but I eat either fresh and usually raw liver several times a week. I don't know how often, maybe 2 to 4 times a week, depending on how much I have at home. All right, next question is from Olivier, I think. Sounds French. He said, I was wondering about stories I've heard that eating liver is not good because it's full of toxins. That's an interesting and widespread misconception, actually, that liver stores toxins. It is true that the liver cleans or helps detoxify the body, cleaning the blood, etc., but it doesn't store those toxins. So eating liver from a pasture-raised animal, especially from a ruminant animal, is incredibly healthy, and there are no toxins in there. I mean, there are toxins probably in small amounts in everything that you consume, be it a vegetable, be it muscle meat, be it organ meat. There are always some residual toxins just based on the environment that you can't avoid, but there is no accumulation of toxins in the liver just because the liver is the organ that filters your blood and detoxifies your body. That's a myth. And so it's perfectly safe to eat liver. And his follow-up question is where in Austria I'm from. Well, I mentioned it before, I'm from Salzburg, born and raised in Salzburg. Curtis wants to know if I am planning on expanding my range of products. And again, that refers back to my freeze-dried beef liver. And yes, I'm in the works of launching additional organ supplements and mixes thereof. Supply chain right now is super difficult, as you can imagine. But it's in the works, and I hopefully will have news and updates regarding that sooner than later. And his follow-up question was if I track calories on a carnivore diet. And the background of his question is that he wants to improve his conditioning and gain lean muscle mass. And so the first answer is no, I don't track calories, I don't track macros, I just eat whatever I feel like. Obviously, I always make protein the center of my diet, so I eat my proteins first, and then I use, because protein is the structure really, and then I use fat and or carbs as my fuel. But I don't track any of that. In terms of bulking up, obviously if you consume more carbohydrates, it's easier to bulk up. And so I kind of gauge by where I am with my macros by just looking in the mirror. If I feel like I'm getting a little bit too much here around my hips, then I lay off on my carbs. If I feel like I'm getting too thin and too ripped, then I eat more carbs. So that's really it, fairly straightforward. I don't track any of that because I think it's too complicated. I don't want to put it on, I don't want to have another task on my plate basically to keep track of my carbohydrates and proteins and fats. It's not worth it for me. Bethanne asked that she said in one of my articles I mentioned that I no longer do strict keto paleo, but instead I'm doing a low moderate carb paleo diet. And so she's curious if that means that I'm going back and forth between ketosis or burning fat and burning carbs. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So again, I don't really keep tracks on my macronutrient intake. I just do however I feel like. But there are times where I'm in ketosis, especially in the morning, especially at the end of my fast. So I typically fast somewhere between 14 to 18 hours every day before I have my first meal. During that time, I'm usually or often in ketosis, and then I would eat some carbs and then I'm out of ketosis. So yes, I'm going back and forth. I want to maintain my metabolic flexibility, and as long as I'm not consuming 400 grams of carbs a day, I do exactly that. So yeah, that's how I do it. Steve is asking, what is the best device to measure heart rate variability? So that's the difference in timing between heartbeats, and one of the things that, you know, Whoop keeps tabs on. And he wants to know if there is what is a good device to measure HRV 24/7. Honestly, I don't know that there is a good device that measures HRV 24/7, and I also believe that you don't really need to measure HRV 24/7 because it fluctuates so much. While I'm talking to you here, my HRV might go up and down. If I drink a glass of water, if the dog jumps on me again, and my HRV might plummet momentarily before it goes back up. So there is a lot of variance throughout the day, and it's not really meaningful to have all of that information. What matters most is how your HRV is doing when there are no external influences. So typically during deep sleep, that's when HRV measurements are useful, because that can tell you how your nervous system is responding to the stressors of the previous day or the previous night. And so that's what Whoop does. And yeah, I don't know, there is, I think, one device called the Leaf or something, a Leaf patch, something like that measures the HRV during the day to kind of give you a cue if you're maybe too stressed and should be breathing. But I'm not convinced how useful that is, because if I work out, my HRV goes down because I'm in a fight or flight response. I'm working out, I'm pushing it hard. So I'm not sure how useful that is to measure during the day, and I have not tried any device to do that, so I don't know for sure. And then second last question from Thomas. He actually sent it to me in German, and so I have to translate here in my head real quick. And he is asking what I think about Garmin watches, smartwatches. And to be quite honest, I have not yet had a chance to use a Garmin smartwatch in a while. I was offered a review unit actually just the other day, but right now I don't have the time to do a full review and to really spend enough time on testing it, but I will do that in the future, and then I should have a good idea whether or not Garmin is a good competitor to a Whoop, an Apple Watch, an Oura Ring, or some of the other devices that I have been using. And then the last one from Javi. He wants to know, how do you make money? Very good question. So up until recently, actually a day job, so I earned a regular income as a senior VP of sales and marketing, but I quit that job and I'm now fully focused. I'm fully focused on my blog and my supplements, and that's how I earn my money. So I have affiliate relationship with brands. So when I review a brand and I really like it and I publish it on my blog or on my YouTube channel, I typically have some sort of discount code or an affiliate link, and if you use it to make a purchase, then often you get a discount and I get a commission. So that's one way of how I make money. I also have ads on my blog that come from Google, where I don't control necessarily the contents of those ads, but they are shown to you, and then that's another way how I make money. And then last but not least, I sell freeze-dried beef organ supplements, and that's my third way of making money. And so that's how I make my money. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up. I know there was a long Ask Me Anything, the first one. Maybe the next one is going to be shorter. Maybe we're going to have more in the future to keep them a little bit shorter. But thank you again so much for all of the questions. Very interesting questions. I hope I could provide answers that answer those questions sufficiently. If not, reach back out to me. I'll try to answer them offline. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Make sure you check out my blog, check out my shop if you want to support me. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, let me know in the comments what I could have done better. Until next time.